foundation tutorial, we are going to be talking all about the wrist. Alleviating wrist pain is one of the most commonly asked questions. So today, I want to run you through a few form pieces that will help get pressure off the wrist joint, as well as provide some alternatives that you can do if your wrists are bothering you. So let's get started. The very first thing I want to start by talking about today is the wrist crease. So the base of the arm, where it meets the hand, this is our wrist, and this right here is the wrist crease. Now, the reason I like talking about the wrist crease so much is because it provides a really great visual to help you understand how much pressure is landing in the wrist joint. So the more that I move my hand into a really sharp, like 90-degree angle, the more wrinkles I'm going to see come into this wrist joint right here, yeah? The more that I can elongate this space, the less wrinkles I'm going to see in the wrist crease. Now, this is your sign. If you look down at your hands and you have a whole lot of wrinkles in the wrist crease, that is a sure sign that you are putting a lot of pressure on the wrist. The more that you can elongate that space and create less wrinkles, the less pressure that you're going to feel in the wrist, and that is where we want to try to go. So when it comes to releasing wrist pain, it's less about strengthening your wrist, and it's more about adjusting your body into a proper form to take pressure off of the joints. Don't worry, I'm going to explain more. So when you set up a position that requires weight to be down on your hands, and y'all, this could be anything, right? This could be in a tabletop, it could be in a kneeling plank, we could be talking about a full plank, even something that comes over to the side. Anytime we're in a position where weight is down in the hands, we want to be looking at what's going on in the top of the wrist, okay? So I'm going to set up here on hands and knees, and I'm going to shift my weight forward. This is where most people naturally land, okay? Right now, my shoulders are directly over my wrist, and look at what's happening. Look at what's happening in the top of the wrist. Not only do I have a lot of wrinkles, but they're like very severe, right? They're very deep lines. I even have a little bit of white starting to happen, like coloration in the skin is turning a little white right here. I am putting a lot of pressure on my wrist joint right now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift my weight backwards. Did you see that? Did you see how this wrinkle right here became way less severe and I opened up, or I elongated through the top of the wrist? Now, something that you're going to feel, when the weight is shifted forward up here, you will feel a lot of pressure in like this area of your hand, center of the hand, right here under the fingers and in the fingers. And when you hold a position, you actually want to try to get the majority of the weight resting back here toward the heel of the hand and even toward this part of the wrist. This is where we want to try to center the weight. So again, let me just show you from here, and then I'm going to give you a different visual. Here I am shifted forward, a lot of pressure in the wrist, a lot of severe wrinkles. Weight is now toward my fingertips. Now I'm going to shift it backwards. I'm going to slide those shoulders back. Right away, I get less going on in the wrist. I'm holding that weight more on the base of the hand, and this is going to feel much, much nicer. I want to provide a close-up of what I just showed you. So here I am shifting my weight forward. Notice that big crease in the wrist. Here I am shifting my weight backwards. Notice how instantly it releases some and I have less wrinkles in the wrist. Now I want to show you something else. If you turn your thumbs inward this way, do you see how deep that crease is right here on the side? This is the most sensitive part of the wrist. So something that I think always helps when you're looking at those wrinkles is turn your thumbs out just a little bit and then shift the weight backwards, and that is really going to help you find your sweet spot. Next visual is a bonus, but I feel like it's gonna help some of you. So if you're ever doing a workout where you have to like grab something like this, right? If I loop my thumb around, I just want you to notice how severe the wrinkles are. Now I want you to notice a change I'm going to make. I'm going to unloop my thumb, so basically turning out the thumb like I just talked about. I'm gonna try to get the weight more to the heel of my hand. Can you see how much less that is, right? It's much less severe here than it was when I was like this. So a lot of times adjusting the thumb, adjusting the hand, and working more weight to the heel of the hand will really, really help you achieve some of this alleviating of the crease that we're talking about. So now we've discussed shifting the shoulders back, we've discussed turning the thumbs, and we've discussed where the weight on the hand should be held. The next thing that we have to talk about is the body weight itself, and this one is very, very important. So when you set up, naturally, the ribs will want to fall down, okay? Now, when the ribs fall down, a couple of things happen. The body weight sinks, the shoulders lift, and we drive weight down into, you guessed it, the hands. So if I do a plank right here, I'm going to feel more in my neck, more in my lower back, and more in my wrist. What we want to think about is pushing the floor away to lift our body up to try to get less weight moving to the floor. So watch, here my ribs sink down, and now I push the floor away and I lift up. And I can tell you I'm doing it right now. When I'm here, I can feel more pressure in the wrist. When I'm here, I feel much less pressure in my wrist. So those are the form pieces that apply across the board. However, you may have really, really sensitive wrist, and you may do all of those things and you're still feeling a lot of pressure. And in that case, I want to give you some options that you can do. So the first option is to go onto the forearms. You can completely skip the wrist and pretty much any move that we do, and you can just prop yourself right there on the forearms, and that is no issue at all. So option number one, moving to the forearms. Option number two applies to the tabletop plank. In a tabletop plank, instead of having your hands flat, you could prop up the heels of your hands. It looks a little something like this. And now the wrist line is really long. There's no pressure in the wrist. And any move that's done in the tabletop position can be done up here. Option number three is to use blocks. Putting your hands on blocks can immensely help release the pressure in the wrist. So just having the hands up can help, but I do want to show you something else. You can slide your hands like forward or to the side so that your fingers kind of drape off some, and that will help you get that longer line that we're talking about. So those of you playing with blocks, explore not only putting your hands on them, but moving your hands around the blocks to a spot that feels best. Option number four is to come up to the chair. Now, I like the chair for several reasons in this. Number one, you can easily let your fingers drape off the side of the chair so you're really holding the weight on the heels of the hands. This is that example I showed you earlier where I was wrapping my hand around the bar, right? That kind of applies here. Instead of being like this with my hands, I go to the side, I turn my thumbs out, and now that's gonna be a lot less pressure. But the other reason why the chair is so great is because you don't have as much gravity working against your body, right? You've given yourself this much space from the floor, so you can think of it like it's taking this much pressure off of the wrist, which then also applies to doing a plank on the wall. Y'all, doing a plank on a wall, especially if you have a really sensitive wrist or sensitive body anywhere, I don't want you to be afraid to take the wall because you will strengthen in the ways that you need to. You'll be able to practice all the form points that we've talked about, and you won't be distracted by so much pain happening in the wrist crease. So let's recap. We're always going to be looking down at the wrist to try to make the wrinkles look less severe. We can do that by shifting our shoulders backwards and lifting the weight of our ribs up. When we hold a plank or any type of position with our hands down, we want to feel the majority of the weight resting toward the heel of the hand, not at the center or the top of the hand. And if all else fails, make sure to find an alternative for your body that's going to work for you. That includes kneeling, coming up to the fingertips, utilizing blocks, the chair, or the wall. Good luck.